Thank you for having me today, and really great presentations before mine. I just wanted to pay respects to the traditional owners of this land, the Gadigal people, and my ancestors and my elders, including my elders in this room that are here today. They paved the way for someone like me to create the change that we all want to see. So I'm going to start by saying you can't be what you can't see. So when I founded DeadlyScience, you have to go back in time. You have to go back to 2008. I sat across from my careers advisor. He said, "What do you want to be when you finish school?" Confidently. And I go, "I want to be a zookeeper. I want to be a scientist." And he said, No. Kids like you do not become zookeepers because you need a degree in zoology and you're not smart enough. So stick to a trade or you're probably going to end up in jail or dead because that's generally what happens to kids like you. I did what most people do, and I got on a bus and a plane and I ended up in Western Australia. And to give you context, I grew up in Yuin country on the south coast of New South Wales. I'm a proud Kamilaroi man. My family come from Walgett, but I was raised in Yuin country. I travelled all the way across Australia at 16 because I wanted to prove that guy wrong. Because you can't be what you can't see. So I wanted to see it. So my career sort of took twists and turns. I ended up becoming a zookeeper. I worked at Shoalhaven Zoo. And the beauty of science is that our people are the first scientists. We're the first astronomers. We're the first chemists. Heck, we're the first forensic scientists. If you were a fella and you got lost in the bush, the first people that come and got you are the black fellas. Where's our thanks? No, but it's important that we recognise our first people as the first contributors to science, and we're still doing it. It's not a past tense. We're still doing it today. We've got deadly scientists working in the tech game. We've got deadly scientists that you're about to see working in the classrooms. And this is important. So I challenge you today to not just walk with us today, but walk with us tomorrow. So let's tell the story about how DeadlyScience started. I'm working at the Sydney Uni, right? I'm working in labs. I'm scraping out mouse boxes. And I'm looking after rodents, and it's a gross job, so don't do it. But I wanted to give back to my people because how many other kids out there are told they can't do science? So I started working with Mob in Redfern. And, we started talking about space stations. We started talking about, glow-in-the-dark mice. It's true, it can happen. Google it. But, I was taken away by our mob. We have such an epiphany with science. And the reason for that was, I think back to my old man, my grandfather. And, he really encouraged my love of animals. And he gave me a book. And that book taught me how to read. And to give you context, I was born in 1992. And the book he gave me was made in 1982. And that was Reptiles in Colour by Harold Coggan. And that was the first ever reptile book that was put in colour. I tell you what, I picked out every single reptile and I got a little pencil and I put a little X next to it. And I learnt every single word in that book. That taught me how to read. That gave me the freedom of education because education equals freedom and science equals hope. When we started DeadlyScience, I started working with these kids and they're like, well, how come we didn't get books when we were younger? How come we didn't get told we could do science? We often push our mobs into art and sport, and they're great things. I'm a footy fan, I love footy, but we're so much more than that. We've got countries all over Australia from Wiradjuri to Kamilaroi, and one end's different to the other. They're different. So we're just scratching the surface. And for me, when I started DeadlyScience, I was like, I'm going to do what most weird people do, and I'm going to Google remote schools, and I'm going to get on the blower, and I'm going to see how many science books they've got in their school. If I told you all here today that there was 15 books in a school when I started this. Tell you what, I packed up every single book I owned, and especially the Reptiles in Colour book that my pop gave me, and I sent it there. In fact, I spent the first year working 2 jobs. I worked at the University of Sydney, I worked as much overtime as I could, and I also worked at a pet hotel in Duffy's Forest. Because I believe in change. And change starts with one, and then it multiplies. So you're all here today to help me create change. So I started sending these books and I'm talking to this one school, and then one school turns into 4 schools, it turns into 40, and now I've got 150 schools. And it's not just books. It's resources, it's microscopes, it's telescopes. It's looking through at the stars and discovering, asking questions and learning and listening and observing. That fella in the middle there on my PowerPoint, his name's Trey. He's from Geraldton, he's 14. He was on the Clontarf footy team. He got kicked off because he couldn't read. Now, what people don't consider is that English is his third or fourth language. You wouldn't go to France and expect to be at the top of the class. You just wouldn't. So why do we put this expectation on this kid who is struggling? I can happily tell you, I spent a whole year on Zoom teaching Trey how to read. And I'm proud of him because he doesn't want to be a deadly footballer. He wants to be a deadly scientist. And then you got little Cyril in the corner there. Cyril's from Jilcom Indian community up in Catherine. Cyril's he's now 12 years old. I've worked with him since he was 8 years old. I brought him down to Sydney. I brought his whole class down to Sydney. We went to the zoo. We went and enjoyed science. We looked at all the old places around here, and the only complaint was the stairs because they don't have stairs in Catherine. I work with 9,000 kids across Australia, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids and non-Indigenous kids as well, because they need help too. Because you can't be what you can't see. You know how much it costs to replace 20 books in a library? It costs about $200. There you go, you can replace 20 books right here tonight. How about a microscope? How about you give a remote school a microscope that's never had one in their school? And we combine it with our science, the first science. How much better would we be as a country if we combine the first science with the first science with modern science? Because there's a lot of lessons to learn. You've just got to be willing to listen. How about putting a greenhouse in community where a single piece of lettuce in a remote community can cost up to $27? Costs about $5,500. I'm willing to pay it. I'm willing to work for it, but I need your help. So my challenge to you tonight is to walk with me, because we've sent out 20,000 books so far. We've provided microscopes and telescopes. We've also provided traditional knowledge to our mobs in the city and the mobs that are distant from that, because it's important. It's important we share, because our culture is a learnt thing. It can't be bought, it's learnt. So we need to teach it, and that's it.
And for Deadly Science tonight, the room raised $100,500.
And the sunlight hurts my eyes.